Hey, welcome back to my studio. I've been working away on a small fall jewelry collection this week. For this collection, I really tried to curate a thoughtful mix of colors to incorporate into stained porcelain. So I did that using mason stains, and I've created a small variety of new earring designs. And then I also made some chunky chain necklaces, which is something I wear a lot. So actually I made the chain necklace that I'm wearing right now out of a cobalt blue clay body, and I wear this all the time, and I love my chain necklaces. For my fall collection, my chains are going to be a bolder, chunkier, round chain link. Here I am working with an ivy green clay that I recently mixed. To form the chain, I use a small extruder to press out even coils of clay. It can be a little bit of a time-sensitive process because the clay does start to dry out if you don't move quickly enough. So that is why I work with the small extruder, so that it doesn't dry out. Once I press out the coils, I smooth them out with a sponge so that the surface feels clean and a bit more refined. The wet sponge adds a bit of moisture back into the piece too, so that it's less likely to crack when I'm bending and shaping the links. Once the coil is ready, I score the ends and add a touch of water before carefully forming a small circle out of the coil. So those become my first links for the necklace, and from there I build the chain link by link, weaving each new coil through the last and sealing the connection. It's a pretty delicate process, and if I rush, the joins won't hold, so I do take my time, but I love the slow rhythm of making these chains. What excites me about these pieces is their sculptural quality. Each link has its own weight and presence, and when they all come together, the chain becomes really bold and striking. These chains are fired raw without glaze because the glaze would fuse the link shut, so that means the color of the clay really shines. And when they're finished, I attach the porcelain chain to a gold-filled necklace chain, and I love the contrast between the matte clay and the shine of the metal. It adds a little bit of edge and really allows the porcelain links to stand out as the centerpiece. I have a little bit of a confession to make. I actually don't do a whole lot of testing in my kiln before running with an idea, and that is for a few different reasons. One being, I only have a big kiln, so I feel kind of badly wasting the electricity and the space within the kiln. Maybe that's a mindset shift I need to get over. I also have been thinking about getting a small kiln for testing next year, so we'll see. I might do that. Number 2 is I have a very limited amount of time to work on my craft. I work a full-time job and I'm away from home a lot. I like to be home when I'm firing the kiln, so that creates a little bit of a challenge. And then number 3 is the biggest reason. And let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. I'd love to know how you feel. I've learned to really love the process of surrendering to how things turn out. I do my best to follow a vision in hopes that it's going to turn out the way I expect, but oftentimes there's variations, and the funny thing is sometimes I love a piece even more when it turns out slightly different than the way I expected, because I love the element of surprise and mystery when it comes to working with clay. Ceramics has taught me to become friends with the unknown and to accept the flow of life. When things go wrong, it can be really frustrating, but there's always a learning experience in it, and there's something beautiful to me about kind of just letting go, and whatever comes of a piece, just learning to embrace it. That said, I have definitely had fails and pieces that have turned out really badly, but that's okay. Those pieces are perfect to give away to a friend or just to see it at the very least as a learning lesson, and I take that knowledge with me into future pieces that I make. I've had the word surrender in my mind a lot this week in terms of just letting go and accepting what life brings, accepting how my pieces are going to turn out when I let myself get into the creative flow and let that carry me. And wherever it takes me, I feel good about it because I feel good in the process of making and moving forward and picking up momentum. This week, while I was working in the studio, I listened to the audible version of the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Singer is also the author of The Untethered Soul. Back in the 70s, while studying economics, he had a spiritual awakening that shifted his path. His story is really about learning to say yes to what life brings instead of trying to control every detail. As I worked away on these blossom studs, I thought about that concept of letting go, shaping each petal without getting too tied to how I want them to look or how I hope they might come out in the kiln. Right now, the crimson red clay that I'm working with feels velvety and rich, but once fired, it could deepen in color or fade or even change into something I didn't anticipate. That's the push and pull of this process. I can cut, layer, and smooth every petal, but at some point I have to step back and surrender to the outcome. And that's not always easy. There is a part of me that wants to know and to feel certain, but with clay you don't always get that certainty. You do the work and then you kind of just have to let go. I've started to see that as a practice, not just in ceramics, but creativity as a whole. How often do we hold back on an idea just because we don't know exactly how it's going to turn out? I know I catch myself dragging things out or overthinking or waiting until it feels safe or perfect before I share something with the world. But if I've learned anything new here, it's that you can't wait for perfect. You just have to make and to keep moving and to let the process carry itself forward. To me, surrender isn't about giving up, it's about letting go of the illusion that we can control everything. I think about how often we put our lives on pause, waiting until we feel more prepared, more polished, or more certain. We hold back because we're scared of being seen in the in-between. But the truth is, life is never going to hand us the perfect moment. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept, that waiting doesn't actually protect us. It just keeps us circling the same place. We tell ourselves we'll start once things calm down or once we feel ready, but if we're honest, that day never really comes. So the word surrender, at least how I'm starting to understand it, isn't about sitting back. It's the choice to move forward anyway, to take the step even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. And maybe that's worth asking yourself too. What's the thing you've been putting off because you're waiting for the timing to be perfect? Maybe it's the book you've been meaning to write, but you keep telling yourself that you'll start when you have more time. Maybe it's the painting that you never take off the shelf because you're afraid it won't look the way you want. Maybe it's simply saying yes to a new chapter in life, even if you don't feel fully ready. What would happen if you began anyway? If you gave yourself permission to step in without waiting for everything to be perfect first? That's what surrender feels like to me, trusting that the act of showing up has its own worth, that even if it doesn't unfold the way you imagine, it can still become something meaningful. I think the practice is learning to befriend the unknown, to move anyway, even without certainty, and trust that good things can rise up from that. The universe needs your creative energy, your perspective, and your spark just as it is right now. So I hope you find a little time this week to honor that for yourself, to make something, to follow a thread of curiosity, or to simply trust that showing up just as you are is already enough.